So, I've honestly had enough. I'm not even kidding. I'm aggravated, I'm pissed off, and I'm absolutely fed up with this BS. So let's talk about why the markets are red today. And when we talk about why the markets are red today, I want you to bear in mind that the same people who are managing the policy right now are the same people who flooded the market with too much money in 2020, caused this inflationary cycle. Then they waited sitting on their ass for a whole year claiming this was transitory and it's going to blow over like some cold, which it didn't in 2021. And now they're keeping the throttle all the way through, basically going full blast in neutral, going nowhere besides ruining you, the middle class. So let's go back with this. Now, that was just the bottom line. For those of you who don't have time to watch the entire video, there you go. Now, if you want to hear that full breakdown, stay with me because I'm going to get triggered as hell today. So we heard that August inflation came in at 3.7%, which was way higher than the already 3.2% we had. So it's climbing back up after we almost could taste that 2%. You know how you play football, you're on defense, you can almost taste the water on the sideline, the Gatorade, but they get that fourth down. Literally what happened. So yesterday, Powell comes out, the Fed comes out, the FOMC comes out, and they basically let us know two things. Number one, they're not raising rates, which was expected. No issues with that. But the second thing they've said is that they're going to keep rates much, much higher for much, much longer, including a rate hike in 2023 and only 2 rate decreases in 2024 by 0.25 each at the best case scenario. So basically what this means is the Fed is going to keep a vice grip on the balls of the middle class for the next 15 months. Now, I have no problem with it if this was needed, if this was effective, but the problem is that it's not. In fact, I have 2 problems with this, not just one. My first problem with this is that these mother lovers in their suits and their nice makeup and all their correspondents and analysts and everybody there, sitting around this freaking press conference have no idea how hard this shit is. I do. I may have money now, but it wasn't always the case. I was a poor-ass immigrant living with my dad, my mom, and my sister in a one-room, not one bedroom, one-room apartment, which we couldn't afford anyways. Like, look, I know what's being broke feels like. Believe me, I do. And I know what it's like looking at prices. Most of these mother lovers, they don't. So Powell's up there on his pedestal in his ivory tower talking about, we understand the pain and we have to do this to help you guys out. Shut the fuck up. Look. The thing is that we're talking about this 3.7% inflation, blah, blah, blah. Look at the real inflation. Since 2021, food has gone up by 10% and 4%. So 14.5% since 2021. So everything you're buying in the supermarket is now 15% more expensive. Cereal is up 16% for that period. Car insurance, 15%. Health insurance, 10%. Freaking gasoline went from $2 per gallon to $4 per gallon. So let me ask you this question. If gasoline prices went up 100%, if food prices are up 15%, every other thing that matters is up about 15%. How much did your salary increase during these times? I'm guessing it's a little bit under 15%. Now look, at the end of the day, all of this shit that's going on right now is basically inflicting mayhem and pain on the middle class by keeping rates high. When you keep rates high, when you don't actually decrease rates, you're keeping the pressure on the economy. And usually, when you have an inflationary problem, that's the right way to do it. Usually that is. But here's the problem. If you break down into little bits and pieces, and you do this kind of post-mortem analysis on the root causes of the current inflationary spike we saw from 3% to 3.7%, you find out that the Fed ain't doing nothing but cause you pain, inflict damage on you, the middle class, and not doing nothing for inflation. Nothing. If you see the actual report, you find out that what drove this inflationary spike was gasoline and shelter. Gasoline was 10.5% month over month. Shelter is up 7% year over year. Now let's break it up. If you take out gasoline and food, inflation only went up by 0.3% over the past month. Now, I'm not here to say that inflation is good. I'm not here to say that things are freaking cheap. No, it's still horrible because prices went up a lot since 2020. A lot. So things are way too expensive. Your dollar goes a lot shorter than it ever did, and everybody's in the toilet. I'm not saying that things are great and we should all sit around the campfire and sing kumbaya, how everything is freaking amazing. It's not. It's absolutely horrible. But the rate of increase of inflation, if you take away gasoline and you take away food, it's 0.3% of the past month. It's not 0.6, which we actually got when we included gasoline and food. Now, let's break it apart. If this was a good way to solve the fact that gasoline prices are basically dragging the inflation upwards, I would say raise interest as much as you need, because I'm okay with having a crisis, with having a recession, if it saves the economy. I understand it's necessary. But do we really have any impact on gasoline prices by raising interest rates? Because that's the real question here. Because if we don't, what the hell are we doing here? Now, I'm going to show you some numbers. So, the one thing you need to understand about gasoline prices is that they're extremely seasonal and extremely cyclical. The highest point for gasoline prices all year long are in freaking August, because people travel in August. People go on vacations in August. Summer travel pushes gasoline prices up during July and August. This is the peak of every single year of gasoline prices. And it usually ends in September, October, November, December. Now, we're looking at August CPI here. So the fact is that gasoline spiked in August has nothing to do with the spending power of the middle class in America. It's a seasonal thing. Now, add on top of it the fact that the Saudis and the drug cartel known as OPEC, I mean, of course, the oil cartel, is actively shorting supply, so you guys have less gasoline at the pump so they can get $100 per barrel, which is what they want. So if OPEC is actually reducing supply to artificially elevate prices, and there's seasonality here, which is basically we're looking at lagging data from August. Sorry, it's not current data. So what will interest rate hikes do for that? How will raising interest rates convince OPEC and the Saudis not to fuck with your gasoline prices? How would raising interest rates convince people to travel less in the past? I'm just asking a legitimate question. If people travel more in July and August, which happened in the past, unless you got a freaking DeLorean, Mr. Powell, how is raising rates in freaking October, September is going to freaking change the past? We're looking at lagging data. Not to mention the fact that 7% spike year over year in shelter, that's absolutely artificial. It's people sitting on the fence. Have you ever seen that nature films where you got that seal sitting on a type of an iceberg and killer whales are surrounding it and trying to get it to it, but they can't because it's sitting on a freaking iceberg. So they start making waves and then the seal falls off and they eat him. This is literally what's going on right now with the shelter. The shelter, the real estate market, is sitting on a freaking iceberg. People don't want to sell because they locked in lower rates. They don't want higher rates right now to buy a new house. Buyers don't want to pay 7% mortgages. So nobody's selling, nobody's buying. And what it does is it kind of keeps the prices elevated, at least on paper, because if there's not transactional activity, we get data from the last amount of transactions we had. So there's no new data reflecting the fact that the prices are effectively cheaper. Plus, rents are going up because if people aren't buying, they're renting. So rents are going up and the amount of transactional activity isn't really giving us the full picture in the shelter. So there's a lag. All of this does not get solved by increasing rates further. You're not going to encourage people to sell and buy more. You're not going to stimulate the real estate market into actual transactional activity by making the problem worse and increasing rates even more to make the problem even worse. Is this bizarre world right here? I don't understand this shit. Like, why are we trying to ruin the middle class in America by putting more pressure on them when we know it has nothing to do with them? It has nothing to do with the consumption power of the American consumer. It has everything to do with lag of shelter pricing and oil pricing that's coming from OPEC and seasonality. Why crash the economy and crash the middle class and crash everyday hardworking people when it's absolutely not necessary? I don't understand this. Look at the surveys from the New York Fed. the percentages that people put on losing their job over the next 12 months are the highest we've seen since April 2021. Same for actually increasing household expenditure and decreasing household income. Highest numbers we've seen since April 2021. So the consumer is already terrified by the Fed's own data. That's the New York Fed is telling you consumers are terrified. When consumers are terrified, their confidence is low, they're spending less. But the inflation is still going up. Why? Because the oil prices are pushing it up and the shelter is pushing it up, which has nothing to do with consumer confidence and the interest rates. We are already headed into some sort of a slowdown economically because you cannot raise rates and keep it at 5% and not cause unemployment and not cause a slowdown, a recession, or whatever you want to call it. It's already happened. You just don't know it yet. The question is, why make it worse just so you can pretend that you're solving the problem? The problem is currently being solved by itself by the existing rates we already have, and the oil prices and the shelter will have nothing to do with what you guys are doing right now. Why keep rates so high when it's absolutely unnecessary? I don't understand this, and this is, by the way, why the stock market is reacting the way it's reacting, because when you have imbeciles running your policy, people are selling their portfolios because there's no confidence. I'll see you in the next video.